Hello guys, welcome to my channel Lucid Fanfic, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. USJ entrance. We are here today with a declaration of war. Hirojiri stated with a courteous and polite tone that somewhat caught the students off guard, but they certainly didn't lower it. To that end, we have come to this bastion of heroism for a single purpose: to kill the symbol of peace along with an entire class of aspiring heroes. Guess what role you'll be playing? MHMHMH. The villain explained with a muffled laugh to the undisguised fear of the class. As the villain laughed mockingly, Izuku went into analysis mode. He determined that the villain was a tiger-level threat. However, his portal abilities made him a tricky opponent. He still remembered when he fought Blast, and the hero used a similar ability to counter his attacks. As for the others, all the other villains were wolf level or lower, except for that beaked monstrosity, which he could tell was in the upper echelons of demon level. I wonder if I can beat that thing as I am now. I may be strong, but that thing is tougher than Bug God was when I fought him, and that battle didn't exactly go well. Izuku wondered as he remembered his fight with Bug God and Royal Ripper on the beach. Ahaha, was that villain still laughing? Izuku thought, having had enough of this villain's posturing. So you're here to kill All Might and the rest of us, right? That's quite a bold and unoriginal statement. Izuku states, catching the villain's attention. What was that? Unoriginal, you say? Hirojiri asked, rather miffed at the accusation. Yeah, I mean, if I had a yen for every villain that claimed they'd be the one to kill All Might, I have enough money to buy Okinawa. Izuku taunted, hoping to give his classmates the time needed to escape. Unlike most, we actually have a plan. Hirojiri states firmly as his focus tunnels on Izuku and away from the others. Really now? Let me guess, you grabbed like 50 to 60 guys from the esteemed company of Disposable Minions Unlimited? Izuku asked mockingly, angering the villain. We have 80 men actually. Hirojiri replied, accidentally revealing crucial information. So you bought the deluxe package then? And I'm guessing that thing with the brain and the beak is some sort of secret weapon, right? Izuku replies with a cocky smile as he really began getting under the villain's skin. You're really taking all the fun out of this, you know. The villain replies, annoyed at the situation. That was the point. Izuku states as Hirojiri realizes what happened. No, none of you at leaving. Hirojiri cried out as he flew towards the class who were halfway out the door. Out of my way, losers. Let me show what a real hero looks like. Bakugo yelled as he flew at the villain, blasting a few of his classmates in the process with his launch, causing them to fall, making escape harder. For your classmates' sins, you shall all be tortured to death. Hirojiri cried out as he expanded rapidly, engulfing many students, including Izuku, before 13 used their quirk to stop him. Where did you send my students, you bestiardi? 13 demanded. To their deaths. Hirojiri replies as he recovered and loomed over the remaining students. Flood zone. Well, that didn't exactly as planned. Izuku thought to himself as he fell through the air. He looked down at where he was falling to. He almost thought the villain banished him to the ocean when saw a boat in the middle of large body of water, but then caught sight of the edges of the water and saw it was enclosed. Must be some kind of ocean rescue or flooded zone. Izuku surmised as he heard screaming. He looked upon to see Mineta and Tsu falling just behind him. He had faith that Tsu could land on the boat or dive into the water without issue. Mineta, on the other hand, yeah, he should probably do something before the short stack became a stain. Izuku used his aerial maneuverability to throw himself through the air, using his core strength to grab the short student, much to the young man's surprise. Splash! All three of them then entered the water. As Izuku opened his eyes, he saw that Mineta was panicking. Did the guy not have any lingering capacity? He thought, until Mineta pointed behind him. Izuku looked and saw a guy with a shark quirk racing towards them, toothy jaw open and ready to chum them. In an instant, Izuku threw a knuckled backhand at the villain, only for Tsu to come out of nowhere and kick the villain. Crunch! Into Izuku's fist, sandwiching the shark man's head between two attacks, knocking him out instantly, whilst also possibly fracturing his skull. He won't drown, right? He's amphibious. Izuku thought to himself as he gnawed. Tsu swam to the boat with Mineta in row. Thanks for the assist, Tsu. Izuku says as they recover on the boat. You're welcome. Oh, by the way, why'd you grab Mineta and not me, Ribbit? She asked bluntly. Only had a few seconds before we hit the water, and I figured you'd be fine being a frog and all. Plus, he was panicking so much I was sure he'd fall unconscious on impact and drown. Izuku replied, I'm right here, you know. And why wouldn't I be panicking? That smoke guy said they're here to kill us, and All Might. Mineta replied indignantly as he began uttering about melons and getting a HRM or something. Mineta, shut up, take a deep breath, think about melons, and count to 10. Izuku ordered. Mineta immediately complied and surprisingly enough calmed down rather quickly. Huh, that worked? Thanks, Midoriya. He stated. Good. Now then, I've got a plan on how to get out of here. Do you guys trust me? Izuku stated, asking if his classmates had faith in him. Sue and Mineta simply nodded. Good, now hop on. Izuku replied as he crouched down like he was offering a piggyback, much to his classmates' confusion. Meanwhile, with the villains in the water. Where the hell is Biter? A villainess with fish scales asked indignantly. Bottom of the drink, unconscious. Those hero brats got him. A guy with gills and bident replied. Really? Huh. What a loser. Oh well, that just leaves more reward only for the rest of yous. A villain using the water as a platform stated with a laugh. Speaking of which, hey hero brats, get down here, you cowards, and let us kill you. It's nothing personal, just a job. You understand, right? A villain with fins instead of arms shouted. No reply came. TCH, get down here, you losers. That same villain cried out as he slashed the bat with his revealed to he razor-sharp fins. Crunch. The boat split in two, formed the attack, but no hero students fell in. Instead, the villains saw an individual jump high into the air, looking to be aiming at the water. The hell's that moron's plan? As soon as he lands in the water, he... Boom! One of the villains stated before Izuku, with Tsu and Mineta on his back, landed on the water and shot across the water like a rocket at Mach speed. The sheer speed and the resulting shockwave caused the two massive waves to split the water with such ferocity that the Velisna were all thrown clear of the water and knocked unconscious, or had the flight knocked out of them on impact with the ground. Meanwhile, Izuku just kept running. Flood zone coast. After escaping the flood zone, Izuku stopped and dropped his payloads onto their feet. That went well. You guys all right? Izuku asked as he looked at his classmates who both looked queasy. Blurg. Mineta vomited. Don't ever do the HMMP. That again, Midoriya, ribbit. Sue replied as she struggled to not waste her lunch. Sorry, you too. I forgot most human bodies can't handle that kind of velocity-induced pressure. Izuku replied, embarrassed at his lack of foreplanning. But beyond that, we're safe, and now we need to go help. The Out Aizawa. Izuku stated to his classmates' surprise. Wait, what? We just escaped one group of villains, and now you want to go to another one. Are you crazy? Mineta asked, fearfully not ready to die yet. As much as I don't like to agree with Mineta Midoriya, he is right. Don't you think we should just evacuate? Sue bluntly asks. If someone's in trouble, you save them. Anyone with a moral compass will tell you that. But we're meant to be heroes. We can't just run and hide when the going gets tough. You guys can run, but I'm going to save our teacher. Izuku states as he races towards the plaza. USJ Plaza. When Izuku arrived at the plaza, things didn't seem to be going well. Eraser was looking tired, and there seemed to be no end of the villains assaulting him. He saw a villain with hooked claws instead of hands try a sneak attack. He immediately intervened, kicking the villain away. Midoriya? Why are you here? You're meant to be with her others. Eraser stated angrily as he threw another villain with his scarf. That smoke villain separated us into the different zones. I helped Sue and Mineta escape the water zone and came to help you. Izuku replied as he deflected several projectiles back at the launchers. Then why didn't you go with them? You're only a student, and it's my job to keep you all safe. Eraser replied, annoyed at his Proldom student's actions as he punched Anther villain. True, but it's also a hero's job to save people, and I couldn't leave you alone to fight all these thus alone. I can already tell your eyes are getting dry and your quirks becoming less effective. Besides, wouldn't you want the guy who kicked your butt to back you up? Izuku countered, much to his teacher's annoyance. Fine, but you and I are going to have a strongly worded conversation after this whole mess is over. Eraser replied as he socked a villain in the nose, breaking it. Fine by me. Now let's wreck some face. Izuku replied as the two of them told back to back. The two of them then began completely dismantling the villains at the plaza. The combination of their individual martial arts prowess, Izuku's impossible strength, and Eraser's experience made the two practically untouchable. Any ranged attack Eraser couldn't dodge was deflected by Izuku, and any quirk Izuku didn't see coming was nullified by Eraser. Eventually, all the Plaza villains were either unconscious, in too much pain to move, or just too scared to get back up. DMN at all, these trash mobs are worthless. And what the hell is up with that hero student? He looks familiar. Tomura thought to himself as he tried to remember Izuku's face. Then, Izuku relayed his killing intent on the direction of a villain who still had the will to fight. The wave knocked out the villain and hit Tomura instantly, reminding him of who Izuku was. You. I recognize you. You're that guy from the gate. The raid boss. Tomura exclaims to Izuku's confusion as he drops a pummeled villain. Raid boss. Personally, I'd consider myself of the monk class actually. Izuku cheekily replied, getting a hidden grin from Eraser. Shut up. You kill him. Tomura screams, causing the monster to rush Izuku. In an instant, the creature was bearing down on Izuku, and before he could react, the monster was throwing a punch. The attack came so suddenly and swiftly that Izuku couldn't react in time. He braced himself for the hit, but it didn't come from the Nomu. It came from Eraser. His teacher had shoved him out the path of the monster's attack and took the hit for him. Eraser was thrown a solid 30 feet and landed like a sack of tossed potatoes, with BLD spewing from his chest and mouth. Eraser-sensei. Izuku screamed as he looked at his teacher, barely seeing his breathing. What a shame. The great earhead dead after a single hit. Oh well, more XP for me. Nomu, kill the brat. Tomura stayed before sicking his pet Lister on Izuku. However, this time Izuku was ready. The last attack almost got him since the Nomu wasn't emitting any killing intent until Tomura ordered the attack, but now that it was bathed in the aura, Izuku could read it. But it was still stupid fast. Izuku barely turns with the Nomu's super fast punch to reduce the damage and counters with his own attack, smashing its beak like a vase. As the two combatants reel from the clash, Izuku goes into analysis mode as he snorts out BLD from his now bleeding nose. He again determined that the monster was in the demon category of strength and currently outclassed him in that aspect. However, Izuku had 3 strong advantages. He was marginally faster than the Nomu. He was possessed greater skill than the monster, and he was much smarter than the Nomu, whose eyes beheld nothing but a creature so dumb it made rocks look like geniuses by comparison. However, there was one problem. Aizawa. He was injured and could die any minute if not treated. Thankfully, that line of thought was assuaged once he saw Tsu and Mineta making their way towards their teacher, with Mineta actually being brave and throwing his sticky orbs at the villains to keep them pinned down. But Izuku's relief only lasted so long as he immediately felt the Nomu coming back at him for round. He immediately went to match the beast's punch. Boom! Izuku caught the Nomu's punch, which burst nearly all that arm's muscles, and with a swoosh of force used whirlwind iron-cutting fist to slice the creature's arm to bloody ribbons. The Nomu howled on pain as its arm fell to the floor in pieces as the technique's slashes continued to crawl up and toward its face, covering it in cuts. Izuku smirked, thinking the fight would get easier, only for the monster to immediately regenerate its lost arm and wounds. Oh, SHD, this is gonna SCK. Izuku muttered as he prepared for round 3. The two of them launch at one another at blindly speed and begin brawling like they're no tomorrow. And for one of them, that sentiment TI going to be true. Due to their speed being almost equal, but Izuku possessing greater skill, he was able to dodge and deflect all the Nomu's attacks. But with the beast's superior strength and broken levels regeneration, the fight was going nowhere fast. The Nomu was too stupid to strategize, but also too tanky and regenerative to be put down by Izuku, whilst Izuku himself was too slippery and skillful for the Nomu pinned down and end. That was until Tomura got tired of waiting and gave up on getting a dramatic battle with the number 1 hero. Gah! F this. Nomu use Berserker mode and kill this hero F. Tomura screamed in impudent rage like a toddler throwing a fit over ice cream. In response, the Nomu roared to sky as his muscles bulged outward and its stats flew off the charts. The monster rushed Izuku nerve faster than 4 and broke through his defenses with a ferocity only a high demon level mister could. Izuku was overwhelmed in an instant as Nomu threw a devastating punch through his guard. Crunch! And hitting him square in the chest, shattering his ribs and sternum like ceramic. Crush! whilst the resulting force sent him flying into the concrete stairs that lead to the entrance of the USJ. Ha ha ha. Take that, you hero loser. Not so scary now, are ya? It felt good to see one for you fuckers finally die. Oh, I'm feeling a victory high. Tamura celebrated as he looked at Tsu, Mineta, and Eraser with cold eyes. I wonder if it feels even better when you do it yourself? Tamura speculated as he rushed the trio ready to kill them himself. He was on them in seconds. He reached for their throats intending to kill them with decay. But when he grasped them, nothing happened. He looked down and saw Ezerhead, somehow still conscious and using his quirk nullify Tamura's. Haha, you really are incredible, Eraserhead, but your effects are pointless. Either I strangle them to death, or your eyes close and I turn them dust. Either way I win. Tamura taunted as he began to choke out Tsu and Mineta, cackling the entire time. The two hero students tried to pry him off, but he was too resolute. But Tsu did manage one scream. Someone, help us. She cried out in terror as tears began to form in her eyes and fearful croaks filled her throat. Little did she know, her cry for help was heard. A few moments ago, Izuku's chest hurt, scratch that, his everything hurt. It hurt so much that he could barely even think, barely even move a finger or even twitch a single muscle. His body was telling him to just rest, to go to sleep, and to just accept his fate. But then, someone, help us. He heard a cry for help and refused to let his go unanswered. His mind began formulating worst-case scenarios where his friends died, his teacher died, All Might died, because he wasn't strong enough. No, 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 no. I refuse to die here. I refuse to fail at the first hurdle. And I refuse to let that ominous future come to fruition. Izuku thought to himself as his body did what it was made to do, what it did when he was Garou. Evolve. Shirakakomom. He shot off like a fighter jet towards the source of plea for help create shockwaves with his momentum alone. He saw Tsu and Mineta in the villain's hands and shot towards him faster than the eye could track. Before Tamura could comprehend what was going on, he struck, then again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. A flurry of attacks barraged his entire body, each with the force of speeding car. He was thrown 20 feet, and he could barely move. As he sat up to see what just hit him, his confidence cracked. There stood that hero student again, his body broken, but still defiantly standing. As he struggled to stand back up, or even move as he screamed in rage. Inomu, finish off that hero brat right F now. He screamed, causing the didn't creature to spring into action still, in berserker mode. Izuku retaliated in kind, and their fists clashed, creating a tremendous shockwave. The force of the attack shredded Izuku's shirt, but did little else. Izuku's limits are starting to break. The two fighters immediately began another clash, but this time it was different. This time Izuku had the upper hand. As with every attack, his strength increased. With every dodge, his reflexes and battle sense increased. And with every hit, his durability increased. What the hell do you think you're doing, loser? That Nomu was bioengineered to be All Might's superior in every way. Tamura shouted in defiance of the facts he bore witness to. That fact being that Inomu was losing. With Izuku, he was reliving a battle much like this one from his old life. The time he fought Super Alloy Darkshine. Except this time his opponent didn't have a fragile ego, and wasn't human, which meant one thing. He didn't need to hold back. Why the hell are you even bothering to fight, you moron? You're obviously at your limit, and Nomu's regenerative and strength quirks make its stamina unlimited. Tamura mocked, hoping to weaken the hero student's resolve. Screw you. If everyone gave up when they hit their limit, then no one would be a hero. So you know what? Izuku snaps back as he prepares to finish the fight. Right here. Right now. I'm going to surpass my limits. I'd be a terrible hero if I couldn't. Izuku boldly states as he separates himself from the Nomu using an ear clap to rattle its ear canals, and his labored breathing stops. Izuku then takes a deep breath and releases his body's natural restrictions. This was the awakening breathe, a technique that allowed the user to temporarily use 100% of their power, no matter the condition their body was in, for a short time at the cost of extreme fatigue when it wore off. He then charged the Nomu, and the beast returned in kind as he prepared his final attack. Water Stream, Whirling Wind, Cross Fong Dragon Slayer Fist. Izuku yells as he unleashes the technique that had been the death of many a demon and dragon-level monster alongside his killing intent. The flurry of attacks were so focused, so furious, so lethal, that they'd mutilated the Nomu, so much so that its regeneration not only couldn't keep up, but burn out completely, leaving the monster to its ultimate fate. The last thing its uncomprehending mind ever knowing was true fear. Eventually the smoke settled, and what Tamura saw shattered his confidence. The Nomu, engineered by both the doctor and his sensei, designed to surpass All Might, was dead, tore to shreds and ripped asunder as if by some rabid and staving animal. Plus ultra. Motherfucker. Izuku cheekily states as his vision goes dark, but still stands emitting his killing intent. No. Impossible. That Nomu was made to kill All Might. It was given 4 quirks to perfectly counter him. How? How did you kill it? Tamura screamed in confusion and anger as he tried to crawl towards Izuku. Just then, Kurogiri returned. Tamura Shigaraki, we must retreat. A student escaped, and I believe he's gone to get aid. Where's the Nomu? The smoky villain asked as Tamura pointed as the monster's remains. Kurogiri went silent in shock, but quickly snapped out of it. We must restart before. Kurogiri began only to be interrupted. Never fear, my students. Why? Because I am here. The thunderous voice of All Might stated as he appeared at the top of the stairs. Any villain still conscious immediately gave up and surrendered. Tamura, on the other hand. All Might, I hate you and mark my words. One day I will kill you and all your students. Or my name isn't Tamura Shigaraki. Tamura screamed as Kurogiri warped them both away. Humph, cowards. Are you all right, young Midoriya? He asked, getting no reply. Yeah, young Midoriya? All Might asked again, this time giving his student a nudge. Izuku then fell down, but was caught by a now very concerned All Might. His eyes were blank, but he was still breathing. Immediately, All Might rushed back to UA as fast as he could, leaving the remaining villains to the teachers who had also just arrived. Please, 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 if there is a god out there, let this boy live. All Might begged whatever deity he hoped ran the world as he raced towards the intensive care ward at full speed. Hidden location. Oof. Ugh. Tamura groaned as he fell through the warp portal on the floor of the bar, displacing a few more ribs. I take it things did not go well? A voice on a monitor asked. It did not. The Nomu was killed and our troops were defeated. Kurogiri replied calmly as he walked behind the bar and reached for the scotch. How unfortunate, though not altogether unexpected of All Might. The voice states only for Tamura to interrupt. It wasn't All Might. He didn't even show up until after it was dead. It was some Fing hero brat who killed it. Tamura stated angrily as he tried to pop his ribs back into their sockets, much to the voice's surprise. Really? HN. So then, he finally found his successor then, and it killed my creation. What fun. The voice announced in a cocky tone. Sensei. Fine my French, but what the F are talking about successor? What does that have to do with the brat that broke my body and killed Nomu? Tamura demanded as he pulled himself into a chair completely finished with today. Young Tamura, let me tell you tale of 2 brothers. The voice stated much to its students' confusion. UA Medical Wing. For hours after the USJ. Recovery Girl had been working nonstop for the past couple hours to save a student's life, though to her surprise it was easier than she had expected. When Izuku was first brought in, she immediately hooked him up to an 4 drip to keep him energized, but then she looked away for about a minute only to turn back and see the 4 bag completely empty. She did an initial X-ray to determine the damage and found shattered and floating ribs and a cracked sternum, only for the ribs to have become mere fractures an hour and a half later. She measured his BLD pressure and found it low, only for it to stabilize before her very eyes. This was an unprecedented level of recovery for any, especially a quirkless young man who should be dying from his injuries. She decided to take more genetic samples in order to determine what the hell was going on. She was just about finished when she heard a voice. Where am I? The voice asked, scaring the elderly woman. She turned to see Izuku, already conscious. You're in UA's intensive care ward, Sonny. Though at the rate you're going, you'll be out of here post-haste. She replies as Izuku memories suddenly returned. Wait, what? But the USJ, Aizawa, my friends? Are they okay? Izuku frantically asked, fearing the worst. Relax, don't they're fine. Aizawa is recovering in the other room, and your classmates are all okay. Young Ida ran back to UA as full speed to get help, and it arrived just after you killed that thing apparently. She states in hopes of calming the young man. Okay. Ugh. I feel groggy. How long was I out? He asked as he rubbed his face. For hours. She replied bluntly. For hours. I was out for 4 straight hours. Wait a minute. Oh no, my mom's gonna be worried sick. He stated just as the door was flung open. Izuku, my baby. Inko cried out as she bear hugged her son and began kissing him. She was followed into the room by the dean, a guy in a generic-looking detective uniform, Lunch Rush who was rolling in a cart that smelled delicious, and Yagi who was his small form. Ma'am, please. He may be better than he was when you asked earlier, but he's still injured. Recovery girl warned. I know. I was just so worried. Oh, Izuku, sweetie. Don't worry me, and Lynch Rush, I brought you something help you recover. Inko replied as the university chef unveiled all the dishes the two of them had cooked over the last 3 hours. Now hold on a minute. The lad's just woken up after having his torso caved in. That much food could be dangerous. Recovery girl stated as she boggled at the amount of food before her. Nonsense. I know my Izuku, and he's most definitely hungry. Isn't that right, sweetie? Besides, this'll help him heal. Inko countered as she placed a large table over Izuku and placed the dishes in front of him. The dish consisted of 9 meat dishes including chicken, beef, lamb, fish, pork, and crustacean. There were 3 plates of various vegetables, a plate with a mountain of fries, 2 bowls with one containing half a kilo of fried rice, and another filled with assorted diced fruits, 1 plate of pan-fired eggs, and lastly there was an entire pitcher of water. Izuku immediately set upon the food like a starving animal would at prey, barely even chewing half of it. Nizu, Yagi, the detective, and Lunch Rush all watched in amazement as Izuku heals right before their eyes. His bruises vanished, his cuts sealed up, his bones realigned, and his muscles knitted themselves back together. After clearing each plate and bowl, Izuku then downed the entire water pitcher in one go. He then rose from his bed and flexed off his casts and bandages. Phew, that hit the spot. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Lunch Rush. Izuku stated happily as he stretched his limbs. Now that happened, introductions are in order. My name is Detective Tsukachi. This is Dean Nizu and Toshinori Yagi. Miss Midoriya, I would like to ask your son some questions, specifically about what happened at the USJ. The now-named detective asked. Well, I don't see the hard on that, officer. Though I must ask why it's necessary for the others to be here to hear it. Aren't things like this meant to be kept confidential, right? Inko asked curiously. You are correct in that assumption, miss. But Nizu is going to hear these facts anyway, and is a detective himself. As for Yagi, he works for All Might and needs to hear this too. Tsukachi replied, causing Inko's demeanor to shift. You work for All Might? Inko asked Yagi in a sweet tone. Yes, actually I'm his personal secretary. Yagi replies using his cover story. Perfect. Can you give him something for me then? Inko asks with a cherry smile. Certainly, anything at all. He replied. Brilliant. She replied. Smack. Before then smacking Yagi across the face so hard it left a handprint. Probably should have seen that coming. Yagi thought to himself, knowing full well why she did it. That's for being late to USJ and failing to keep my son safe. Please pass on the message. Inko stated in an innocent voice, but giving off a dangerous aura. All right then. Moving on. Mr. Midoriya, can you please recount the events of the USJ from your perspective, please? Tsukachi requested as he produced a notepad and pen. Izuku then did just that. He expunged all the information he had on the situation, from start to finish, from insulting Kurogiri to killing the Nomo. And you're sure it had multiple quirks? Tsukachi asked trepidatiously, hoping the student was wrong. Yeah, although Shigaraki wasn't specific, he said the thing had quirks, plural, specifically for countering All Might. If I had to guess, it likely had some type of super regeneration, super strength, pain nullification, and shock absorption. But that's just based on speculation of how it reacted to being attacked. Izuku explained as Nizu, Tsukachi, Recovery Girl, and Yagi's faces all darkened. I see. Thank you, young man. You've been a great help today, and a real hero. Tsukachi states as he shook Izuku's hand and left. We should probably be going too, sweetie. It's almost dinner time. Inko states, stunning the others in the room when she mentioned dinner as if her son hadn't just downed over 10,000 calories. Actually, Miss Midoriya, I'd like to make a request of your son first if you don't mind. Nizu interjected. Midoriya household. After Nizu made his, frankly rather irresistible request, the Midoriyas went home and Izuku went to go lay down as his mom put dinner on. The university had sent an email to all the students' families informing them that due to the events of the day, all students will receive a 3-day weekend to deal with the aftermath of the incident. After reading the email, Izuku pulled out his phone or pulled up the 1A group chat that Mina basically bullied their representatives to make. Greens. Hey guys, you all good? Anti-gravity. Midoriya, are you okay? Creationist. We should be asking you, Midoriya. Rock hard. Midoribro, are you good, dude? Greens. I'm fine, guys. It'll take more than a broken rib cage to stop me. Rock and roll. Broken rib cage. How are you even conscious right now, Green? Greens. 'Twas but a scratch. I'm all good now. Froggy. A scratch. You took a direct hit from that monster. I thought you died. The main man. Yeah, dude, you looked super dead. Greens. Guys, it's all fight now. I'm alive, and that thing is dead. Now, how are you all holding up? In fact, what happened to you guys? The next hour was filled the chat with short descriptions of what happened to each displaced member of the class. Yamamo, Jiro, and Kaminari all ended up in the mountain zone. Hagakure ended up in the landslide zone, which quickly became the ice zone when Todoroki arrived, who wasn't in the chat right now to give his side of the events. Ojiro ended up in the fire zone all alone and had to use hit and run tactics to fight off his assailants. Tokoyami and Koda landed in the downpour zone. Thankfully, due to how dark the zone was, Tokoyami's dark shadow easily wiped out their opponents. Lastly, Kirishima recounted that he and Bakugo, who also wasn't in the chat currently, ended up in the collapsed zone and they both tore through the villains. As for those left with Kurojiiri, they managed to temporarily subdue the villain long enough, using Siro's tape to allow Shoji to pry open the doors and let Ida escape to retrieve help. Apparently, he ran so fast his engines burn out when he arrived at UA. Sue and Mineta then told the class about the plaza events, and the class was left speechless. Tails the man. So that thing somehow had multiple quirks? Froggy. Yeah, that creepy hand guy said so as much, plus I saw it regenerate and endure attacks from Midoriya that should have sent it reeling. Sugar and spice? I'm not sure who I'm more scared of. That monster or the gut that killed it. Greens. I had no other choice. It was either him or me, and I have no plans to die just yet. Xeno girl. We're not blaming you for anything, Midori, nor are we afraid of you. Rock and roll. She's right, Green. You may be a bit of an anomaly, but you're still our friend and classmate. Octopus man. Here, here. The darkness. I agree. Zookeeper. Love. Rock hard. Yeah, dude, you're still as manly as ever, dude. Izuku felt himself getting all emotional at the praise his friend heroes on him. He was really only used to praise from his mom. But now, he had actual friends. Greens. Thanks, guys. I really needed that. Anyway, I need to go now. My mom's just made dinner. Greens has left the chat. Bakugo household. Meanwhile, at the Bakugo household. Slam. Bakugo slammed his door after finally escaping his overbearing mother's clutches. Where did she get on asking if he was all right? Of course he was fine. He was Katsuki Fing Bakugo, the next #1 hero. The greatest human who ever lived. Those losers that attacked them at the USJ were nothing but gravel beneath his feet to ground into the dirt where they belonged. He flopped on his bed and grabbed his grip strengthened, a piece of equipment to ensure he could strangle anyone he didn't like. Speaking people he didn't like. Deku. He'd overheard from Frogface and Grapus that Deku apparently fought a monster specifically designed to kill All Might. What a Fing joke. As if puny quirkless Deku could ever put up a fight against such a thing. Those two losers were probably too busy psing themselves to acting listen to what was happening. His thoughts then rounded back to Deku. God, he hated that pathetic waste of life with a passion, thinking he could be a hero without a quirk, messing up his origin story, and daring to try and be more than a pebble in his path to the glory and fame he knew he deserved. Todoroki household. Elsewhere, at the Todoroki household. When Shoto arrived home, he was immediately accosted by his SBRM donor, who demanded to know what happened at the USJ. He, of course, ignored the man and went straight to his room, after passing his angel of a sister preparing dinner for them. He looked at his phone and read the messages on the group chat he'd somehow been added to. How did they get his number anyway? As he read, he concluded that the attack and by extension this league of villains, were nothing to worry about. He continued to read until he got to the section on what happened in the plaza. He was stunned. Midoriya, as he believed his name was, had apparently fought a monstrous villain stated to be stronger than All Might. That had to be hyperbolic, right? The ramblings of two people too scared to discern fact from fiction. Back to this Midoriya individual, however. He was certainly looking like the only person in the class who could possibly rival him. But he was too worried about the greenette. He'd simply use his ice and win any fight they got into. Teacher's conference room. Whilst the students recovered from their experience at the USJ, the teachers met to discuss the aftermath. So then, what are going to do about the sports festival? Midnight asked, perplexed. There's no way the HPSC will make us go ahead with it right after a major security breach, right? Ectoplasm asked, worries for the students. Unfortunately, I've already spoken with the commission and their response wasn't open to interpretation. We will be going forward with the festival. Nizu replies to the undisguised anger of the staff. Those kids just went through a highly traumatic experience. Hell, one of them had a near-death experience. And the commission still expects them to get over it in a week and perform for the masses. Hound Dog asked as he growled in anger at the commission's apathetic nature. Speaking of Midoriya, Chio, how was the little listener last you saw him? Present Mike asked the million-dollar question. He's actually completely fine as far as any physical exams can tell. In fact, I'd say he's better than ever. The nurse replied to the confusion of the staff. How the hell is that even possible? According to your report, when he was brought in, his sternum and rib cage had shattered, his muscles were foiled to shreds, and he'd lost over 2 liters of BLD. But now you says he's not only fine but better? Are we sure this kid's quirkless? Cementos asked in disbelief. I've done every test known to man for locating quirks, and they've all come back negative. The boy is completely without a quirk, and yet is somehow capable of performing superhuman feats. According to my data, his metabolism is supernatural, and his body appears to possess the ability to undergo rapid evolution. It's beyond me and beyond the scope of current medical science. Chio firmly stated, giving no room for interpretation. Then perhaps he has another type of power? Midnight speculated, getting the staff's attention. Please elaborate, Namuri. Nizu asked, politely intrigued at the suggestion. Well, maybe instead of having a quirk, his body evolved in a different way. I mean, the global population has been a consistent 20% for years, over 70 years now. Maybe instead of quirks, something new has popped up? Midnight speculated, causing chatter amongst the staff. So in essence, you're suggesting that young Midoriya's genetics have evolved in an alternative way in relation to the rest of us? Nizu asked. I know it sounds strange and impossible, but so did quirks 200 years ago. Maybe a percentage of the population, instead of developing quirks, evolved a way to break the limits of what it means to be human and can attain great strength through extreme training and rapid adaptive evolution. Midnight articulated. But what about those martial arts of his? How the hell can he deflect kinetic energy and cut things with the wind using just plain old martial arts? Snipe asked. Honestly, I've got no idea on that front, Snipe. Midnight replied. According to some students I've overheard, Midoriya called them anti-human martial arts. I looked up what that meant, but got nothing in return. Ectoplasm stated. That type of martial art sounds incredibly dangerous. But then again, so are quirks in wrong or right hands? Cementos bluntly states. I think the upcoming sports festival will end up having a minor silver lining after all then. It'll help us establish how Midoriya's martial arts work, and if they're dangerous. Nizu stated, getting reluctant agreements from his staff. Now then, the in on to the next subject. The dissection of Hinomu's remains. Nexus states as he pushes a button which dimmed the lights and activated a hologram. Day back. After the 3-day weekend ended, the students Kid 1A all returned to homeroom. And then Izuku walked in. Midoriya/Midori/green/Midoribro. The class all cried out as a few of them rush over to greet him. Chief amongst them being Sue and Mineta, who both hugged him. I thought you were dead. Sue croaked as tears formed in her eyes. You saved our lives, dude. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you. Mineta sobbed. Guys, calm down, I'm fine. It'll take more than a few broken ribs to stop me. Also, Mineta, just try to be less of perv if you want to repay me. He stated confidently as he wiped away Sue's tears. He hated to see a pretty girl cry. He's so freaking manly. Kirishima states through clenched teeth. unable to endure his classmates' sheer awesomeness. Yeah, we're all glad you're alive, problem child. Now could you please live out of the doorframe? A familiar lazy voice stated from behind Izuku. Mr. Aizawa, you're back already? Shouldn't you be resting? You look like a mummy in all those bandages. Sue bluntly stated. I'm fine. Recovery girl just went a little overboard with the band-aids. He replied as Kirishima mutters manly. Wait, you took the same hit as Midoriya. How come you're in bandages and he's fine? Mineta asked, causing Aizawa to groan as everyone looked at Midoriya. I heal fast, that's all, he stated before taking his seat. Anyway, moving on, I have an announcement to make. In 2 weeks, UA will be holding its annual sports festival. For some reason, Aizawa announced, muting the last part. Wait, what? But we just got attacked by villains. Isn't it likely we could be attacked at the festival? Mineta pointed out fearfully. Nizu was of much the same opinion, but the HPSC is refusing to back down. Just do so your best, and be on your guard. Now, let's move on with homeroom. Eraser replied to undisguised fear of his students. After roll call was taken, Eraser then told the class he was going to grade them on how they did in the USJ. Apparently, whilst communications were cut off, the internal camera system was still recording everything. He pushed a button on a remote, which caused the chalkboard to rotate and reveal a screen. The screen then began replaying the events of the USJ from different angles and locations. Aizawa graded everyone as fairly as possible, seeing as the situation was unexpected and therefore couldn't have been properly prepared for by any of the students. Most of the students got passing grades, such as those in the fire and downpour zones. Others, like Todoroki, was critiqued as he hadn't properly assessed the area before unleashing his attack, which almost ensnared Hagakure, and Bakugo, whose lack of teamwork was again criticized. But then, they got to the plaza. Funnily enough, Aizawa scolded his own abilities and gave himself a failing grade, but that wasn't what everyone was focused on. No, what everyone was focused on was the fight between Midoriya and the monster called Nomo. Holy hell, that thing is freaky. Mina stated interference to the monster's dead eyes and toothy beak. And it's not tough, but fast too. Look at it move. Ojiro pointed out. Forget the Nomu. Check out Midoriya, bro. Kirishima stated as they watched Midoriya stop the monster's punch and slice its arm to bits. Hey, was that the wind iron cutting technique? Hagakure asked. Whirlwind iron cutting fist, and yes, that is what I used on that thing. Izuku replied calmly. You unleashed a potentially lethal attack, why? Eraser asked for completeness' sake. The leader, Shigaraki, said it was bioengineered, meaning it wasn't human, so I saw no need to restrict myself. Izuku bluntly stated, somewhat scaring his classmates. Good. Even if it was human, a hero has the right to kill an opponent, but only as an action of absolute last resort. Remember that. Eraser stated to the glum faces of his students, other than Bakugo, who looked upset that he couldn't just kill all his enemies. The class then watched as the monster's arm grew back in seconds, and it and Izuku began to clash. Holy hell, I can barely keep up with their movements. Kaminari exclaimed in shock. How did you manage to dodge all its attacks, Midoriya? Shoji asked curiously. I read its movements by watching the twitching of its muscles and the way its stance changed. After a while, its attacks became completely obvious to me, since the thing had no battle sense beyond raw power. Izuku explained to the admiration of his classmates. Reading an opponent's movements mid-fight is a skill I hope you'll all learn one day. Eraser stated as they move on. They watched as the leader of the K shouted about a berserker mode, which caused the monster to get buffer and nail Midoriya in the chest with punch, sending him flying into the stairs, shattering the concrete. Holy SHD, dude. How the F are you alive? Zero shouted, getting a glare from Eraser. Willpower, was Izuku's cool response. So manly, Kirishima squeaked out. The screen then paused. The next few moments are rather distressing. Miss Azui and Mr. Mineta, along with anyone else, may leave the room if they do not wish to see this. Eraser stated with a kindness the class wasn't expecting. When no one left the room, the footage resumed, and the class saw the villain strangling their classmates and laughing as he did so. Sue's fist clenched and Kishima reached over to comfort her, whilst Mineta just squirmed in his seat. Then they heard Sue cry for help, and their hearts broke. As they were fighting common crooks, their classmates were suffering. The volume was then cut off as a warp enveloped the screen. They saw something moving at Mach speed towards the leader, that something was Izuku, who began to pummel the leader mercilessly. Midoriya, I must ask, what is your top speed? Ida asked, slightly jealous of his classmate's incredible velocity. Last time I checked it was Mach 1.2, but after my recovery, I'm not sure. Gonna have to remeasure my abilities to ensure I don't kill anyone at the sports festival. Izuku replied, causing his classmates to gawk in shock. The footage then continued with volume reactivated, and the class immediately noticed something. Sir, is the footage all right? It appears to have frames missing. Yamamo stated. The camera and the footage are perfectly fine, Miss Yaoyorozu. What you're seeing is the result of a 10,000 frame per second camera struggling to keep pace with what it's looking at. Eraser explains to everyone's shock. 10,000 frames per second was the equivalent of viewing the world at 1/10,000 ths of a second at a time, and yet the camera was struggling to keep up with both the Nomu and Midoriya. They then saw Midoriya do two different techniques with his hands and combine them together. They then heard him shout this technique's names. Cross-Fong Dragon Slayer Fist. They then saw Midoriya move so fast he appeared to be in multiple places simultaneously. A super move. That is so cool, Midori. Mina cried out as they watched Izuku eviscerate the Nomu with an uncountable number of precise, yet lethal attacks. The footage then ends as the screen rotates to once again be a chalkboard. Considering that the events of the USJ weren't planned and you all had to adapt to the situation presented to you on the fly, I'm giving you all passing grades, with extra credit to Ida for getting help, and Midoriya for defatting the Nomu in spite of his injuries. Eraser states to the cheers of his students as they congratulate one another, all except Bakugo and Todoroki, of course, who remain silent and brooding. You are all now dismissed. Remember, you've got 2 weeks until the sports festival. Use it wisely. I'm going to sleep. Eraser stated as he laid down and drifted off. Izuku then remembered something. Wait, guys. I forgot. I have something to tell you. Izuku stated, getting his classmates' attention. Nizu asked me to run a martial arts club after lectures. Any of you want to join? Izuku elaborated. He immediately got yes from Kirishima, Ojiro, Jiro, Yamamo, Mineta, and Achiko, who was filled with a scary level of enthusiasm for the sports festival, whilst the others made non-committal remarks and began packing away their things and leaving, until they were stopped in their tracks. Hey, what's up with this traffic jam out here? Zero asks in reference to the over 24 students blocking the doorway. They're all obviously here to catch a glimpse of the class beat actual villains, you moron. They're here to try and scope out the competition before the final showdown. Bakugo scoffed before pushing in front of his classmates. Listen up, you pathetic extras. None of you have a single chance in hell of beating me, so all of you F off. Bakugo yelled with all the subtlety of a nuclear bomb. Bakugo, do not call our fellow students extras. That is highly insensitive. Ida cried out angrily, only to have the blonde ignore him. So these are our opponents in the hero course? I'm not impressed. Looks to me you're all just a bunch of arrogant blowhards. A gut with purple hair and a lazy expression stated from within the group. Bakugo was about to throw one of his signature fits, but was interrupted by Izuku. Nope, that's just Bakugo. You'll have to mind him, as he constantly terrified of the possibility that he may have peaked in high school, so it's just overcompensating, Izuku stated, getting a few laughs from not only his classmates, but the other students as well. Whether or not you're all arrogant blowhards, it doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you right now that I'm going to take your spotlight. So consider this a declaration of war and a threat to your seats in the hero course. The purple-haired guy stated before leaving. At this point, Bakugo again looked like he was about to throw an absolute wobbler, until he was interrupted yet again. Hey, I'm from Class 1B. Heard you guys got into a little tussle with some villains. I wanted to see what you guys were made of, and quite frankly, I think you're all just a bunch of punks. You think you're better than us. A new guy, this time with silver hair and sharp teeth similar to Kirishima's, stated venomously. Izuku, thoroughly sick of this flack, was about to retort in defense of his class when someone hit the silver-haired guy over the head. What did I say? What did I just say? About antagonizing our sister class, you metal moron. A girl with ginger hair that Izuku recognized stated after chopping the silver guy's head with an abnormally large hand. Not to do it. The silver guy stated in an embarrassed tone. You'll have to forgive Tetsu's aggression. His brain is as smooth as his metal skin. Anyway, I originally came over here to say, wait, Midoriya, is that you? The ginger stated, only to get distracted by Izuku. Hey Kendu, been a while, hasn't it? Izuku replied with a smile. So then, you actually got in, huh? Well, I initially just wanted to wish you a friendly challenge to your class, but now that I know that you're here, I'm going to directly challenge you to a one-on-one in the tournament, so prepare yourself. Kendu stated as she extended HR fist, which was mirrored by Izuku, as they fist bumped. Wait, Kendu, you know this guy? Tetsutisu asked curiously. Yeah, he's the guy I told you all about from my dad's dojo. Remember, the guy I told you who showed up one day, challenged everyone, including myself and my dad, kicked all our buttes, and then never showed up again. Kendu explained to everyone present, causing them all to look to Izuku, who was looking away, trying to whistle innocently. Wait, he's the guy? The Tetsu asked. Yeah, he's a real fighter, and one I plan to face him with all my strength at the tournament in 2 weeks. Kendu replied. Well then, I accept your challenge honorably. Izuku replied as they shook hands. The crowd soon dispersed after this little interaction, and the day continued as normal. Third-person POV. For the next 2 weeks, the students of both hero classes trained their buttes off in preparation for the sports festival. During this relentless training, Izuku was teaching his currently rather small club of potential martial artists, which only included a few people from his class. But there was also one additional girl there with brown hair, who was apparently from 1C. She'd apparently screwed up the entrance exam and wanted to get into the hero course using the fetid to prove herself. Izuku was all too happy to help her out. Student waiting rooms. After 2 weeks, it was finally here, the UA Annual Sports Festival. And immediately things got interesting. I'm going to defeat you, Todoroki told Izuku firmly. What? Izuku replied, not having heard him. Objectively speaking, you know the current of the strongest people in this room right now. But today I'm going to defeat you, Todoroki stated, even firmer than before. Okay, sure, what about it? Izuku replied, completely nonplussed with the situation. I mean it, I'm going to defeat you today. Todoroki stated, rather annoyed at Izuku's blasé-faire attitude to his challenge. But before anyone could say or do anything else, the class was called upon to enter the stadium proper by the intercom. Stadium. Hee-yee-yi. Everybody make some noise, you sports fans, for this year's UA Sports Festival. Present mic boomed over the loudspeakers to an uproarious audience. The crowd's hype and cheer increased even further once Class 1A appeared, alongside 1B. Ever since the news of the attack at the USJ broke out, people had been enamored with this class, had been attacked by so many villains, yet managed to come out practically unscathed. That, along with a rumor that one of the students had defeated a monster said to be All Might's equal, drew in higher numbers of audience members. After the 2 hero courses enters the stadium, they were promptly followed by classes 1C through to 1K, with significantly less fanfare for the other classes. Eventually, however, the audience quieted down as the umpire revealed themselves in all their voluptuous glory. It's time for the opening speech, ladies, gentlemen, and all those in between. Midnight announced to a cheering crowd. And now, for the athlete's pledge, please welcome Midoriya Izuku of Class 1A. She announced loudly. Izuku had been expecting this, having watched many previous recordings of prior sports festivals. He knew that the person who got the highest entrance exam score was the one selected to give the pledge. And oh boy, did he have one lined up. He walked up to podium, received the microphone, and spoke. I'm quirkless, and this whole event is a massive mistake. Izuku stated boldly, record scratch. Silence envelopes the entire country. My class and I have just barely survived an attack from a group of villains who wanted our heads on pikes, and now the Hero Public Safety Commission is forcing to compete in sponsored gladiatorial blood sport. Don't lie, you're all only here for the tournament and nothing else. But anyway, holding this event live and televised is a mistake because now the villains that escaped can use it to search for the limits of our capabilities and exploit our vulnerabilities. Izuku explained, causing the audience to shrink in embarrassment and shame whilst the HPSC offices filled with unbridled anger. So my pledge to you all is this. Show those villains why they shouldn't ever dare to slink out their dark holes ever again. Show them that not a single student at UA is to be taken lightly. Show them that no matter what, we will win and they will lose. Show them that we will always go beyond. Plus Ultra. Izuku announced valiantly, causing the crowd to regain its energy and start cheering once again. After Izuku stepped down from the podium, Midnight then announced the first event, an obstacle race. Obstacle race, starting line. All the classes lines up in front of a large tunnel that would act as the entrance to the obstacle race. Izuku noticed that the tunnel was rather narrow, and as soon as the starter gun fired there would be chaos and congestion. Not only that, but Izuku could sense Todoroki's aura and knew the guy was planning to do something. More than likely he planned to freeze everyone's feet as well as the tunnel's exit once he passed it to give himself the distance advantage. However, now that Izuku knew this, he had a plan to perfectly counter it. Ready, get set, go. Bang! Midnight announced as she fired the starting pistol. Everyone immediately rushed forward, and as soon as they entered the tunnel, nearly all of them stopped, having had their feet frozen to the ground by Todoroki. Although, not everyone was caught in the attack, and as for those who did, they wouldn't be stuck for long. Amongst those who dodged the attack were the likes of Yamamo, Mina Bakugo, Mineta surprisingly, as well as a few from 1B. As for those stuck, however, Yuzuku gave them a helping hand by using his exploding heart release in a stomp to send out a shockwave that shattered the ice like glass. Izuku then ran ahead and shattered the ice wall Todoroki had made at the tunnel's exit with ease. As everyone ran after the duochromatic young man, a rumbling could be heard as several entrance exam robots appeared, following by a dozen of zero-pointers. As a small brawl broke out between the students and the smaller robots, Izuku and Todoroki ran ahead with Bakugo in hot pursuit. As they approached the zero-pointers, Todoroki frozen two of them in an instant. Bakugo flew between them, and Izuku sliced through one of the machines ahead with a perfect circle using his whirlwind iron-cutting fist and jumped through it. At this point, Izuku made a significant lead on everyone else as he approached what Present Mike announced was called the fall, which Izuku simply jumped over it with no issue, using the in-between pillars as jumping-off points. Finally, Yuzuku came upon the last obstacle, which Present Mike said was a minefield, which Izuku just ran through with no issue, easily discerning the pattern the mines were laid out, ending in an absolute victory for Izuku, as Present Mike put it. As Izuku waited, he watched as the rest of the students caught up with him, and by the end of it, the list of contestants moving into the second round was made up of 1A, excluding Mineta, who'd fallen behind, all of 1B, as well as 2 people from general education and 1 person from support. Cavalry battle. Next up, Midnight announced the cavalry battle and explained that the current 42 students would have to link up in groups of 2 to 4, designated a team leader, and wait to be given their pointed headbands. Speaking of the headbands, Midnight explained that starting from last place, the bands would go up points at a time, with 42nd getting 5, 41st getting 10, and so on. This lured Izuku into thinking he only have 210 points, and that all the teams and had an even chance of winning. Until Midnight announced that first place would be given a 10 million point headband, causing everyone's killing intent to skyrocket and aim it to Izuku. Thankfully, however, Izuku had no real trouble making a team. He was hounded by his classmates asking to work with him, although not everyone did this, as many wanted to prove themselves. Izuku did, however, meet a decent team with Achiko, the one support student named Mei Hasum who wanted to work with him to show off her baby's red inventions, and one of the general education students named Chikuchi Toki, who had been the brunette that attained his martial arts club. She wanted to work with him to get into the hero course. Apparently, she'd screwed up on the entrance exam by forgetting to bring water, which her quirk, called Aqua Hand, could manipulate in small streams. Once everyone was all set up, the starter pistol was fired, and they were off to the races. As predicted, numerous groups immediately rushed Izuku's group, such as Bakugo and Todoroki's. However, Izuku predicted this, and had shared a plan with his teammates to use Yurika's anti-gravity along with Hitum's jetpack and jet boots to fly away, which worked splendidly. The next set of obstacles came in the form of indirect attacks from the other groups. Midnight had stated that the groups couldn't directly attack one another, but could use their quirks to snag headbands and restrain the other teams. To that end, Izuku's group were accosted by vines, glue, ice, scales, and anything else that Izuku could easily detect and parry alongside Toki, who used her water streams to act as shields. Eventually, however, things took a turn when Hitum's inventions malfunctioned, causing them to land, as Eureka couldn't suspend them indefinitely. When they landed, they were met by a small wave of ice, which Izuku shattered easily enough. He turned to see Todoroki glaring at him, and felt another set of eyes doing the same behind him. He turned to see Bakugo with spite in his eyes. The two team then charged at Izuku individually with the plan of claiming the 10 million points. Todoroki had Ida use his secret weapon to overtake his engines for a burst of incredible speed, whilst Bakugo launched himself at Izuku's team. In response, Izuku did something drastic. He unleashed his killing intent aura to stun the entire area, letting it harmlessly wash over his own team, but seriously throwing off all the other teams in the arena. This sudden upheaval of fear caused a few things to happen. Firstly, Bakugo overshot his attack and just barely managed to reorient himself. Ida panicked and stalled his engines halfway through the burst. The group led by the purple-haired guy looked upset at their leader for some reason, and Todoroki did something unexpected. He released flames from his left side. The battle then ended as Midnight announced the winners of the cavalry battle. Lunchroom. After the cavalry battle, Mike announced that there would be a lunch break for everyone and to stay tuned. As the students ate in the lunchroom, Izuku found his fiend group joined by Toki, who thanked him for not only teaching her some martial arts, but also letting her join his team. Izuku accepted the thanks graciously and offered her a seat at the table, which she accepted. As lunch contained, however, something unexpected happened. Todoroki approached him. "I need to talk to you, Midoriya," he stated coldly. "Okay, talk," Izuku replied as he ate his lunch, some of his mother's homemade katsudon. "Not here. Somewhere private," Todoroki replied as he looked antsy. "Why not here? We're all friends and—" Izuku stated only to be interrupted. "We are not friends. Not that I'm here to make any. Can you just— Can you just please follow me?" Todoroki replied angrily, but calmed down mid-sentence. "Fine, but this better be good," Izuku replied. He scoffed the rest of his lunch and followed his classmate. "Hallways. Okay, we're in private now. What do you want to talk about?" Izuku asked, slightly annoyed. "You overwhelmed me," were Todoroki's first words. "Yeah. And?" Izuku replied. "And? You caused me to break my vow," Todoroki replied, embittered. "Vow? What are you talking about, those flames I saw?" Izuku asked curiously. "As you probably know, my father is the flame hero, Endeavor, the permanent #2 hero in the whole country," Todoroki replied as he clenched his fist. "Yeah, I got that from the name similarity, but what does this have to do with you using those flames of yours?" Izuku replied. "Have you ever heard of quirk marriages?" Todoroki asked, stunning Izuku and causing him to piece together what was going on. "My father's been obsessed with becoming the #1 hero for years now, but he's always come up short. So naturally, he came up with solution. Me," Todoroki stated as he explained how Endeavor bought his wife, Todoroki's mother, like farm stock and kept having kids until Shoto was produced, his perfect prodigy with the power of both fire and ice. "Jesus Christ. Wait, did he do that to you?" Izuku replied, referring to Todoroki's scar. "Worse. One day when I came downstairs to the sound of my mother crying, I walked in on her as she was on the edge of psychotic break. When she saw me, she poured boiling water on my face. All because of what that bastard father of mine did to her, because I reminded her of him," Todoroki replied angrily as he clenched his fists tightly. "Well, this is all well and terrible and completely illegal, but in any case, what does this have to do with me?" Izuku asked, shocked at the #2's actions just to gain an empty title. "What this has to do with you is the fact that you're screwing everything up for me. The day my mother poured that water all over my face was the last day I ever saw her before my dad sent her to a mental institution. On that day, I vowed to never use his accursed flames, but you forced me to use it with that strange aura of yours. You made me break a promise I've held on to for over 10 years. That, along with the fact that you're All Might's son, means that." Todoroki's explained emotionally, only to be interrupted over the last part. "Hold on. Time out. I'm not the #1 hero's son. My father is a deadbeat cheater who last I heard ran off to Hong Kong." Izuku replied, thinking of his father for the first time in over 10 years. "I'm sorry for bringing that up then, but my point still stands. You are my rival in this event. You are the one I must defeat in order to prove to myself that all I need is my mother's ice," Todoroki stated firmly. "Then you'll lose," Izuku stated bluntly, to his classmate's shock. "Excuse me?" he asked. "You'll lose," Todoroki, has it ever occurred to you how foolish and short-sighted this vow of yours is? Have you ever thought as to the repercussions of you entering the hero scene with only 50% of your power at maximum? Have you ever considered how many lives may be lost due to your promise to never use your fire? How? Even if you were to become the #1 hero with just your ice, your father would still win in the end, because he gets what he wants, his son becoming the #1. Izuku outlines much to his classmates' chagrin. I will win, I will become the #1 hero, and I'll do it with only my mother's ice. Todoroki firmly states as he storms away. I need to talk to Nizu. This can't stand. Izuku thinks to himself as he walks back to the lunchroom. Tournament. All right, sports fans, we are back. Hope you all had a nice lunch. I know I did. I had cashew chicken and rice. But anyway, it's time for the tournament event. President Mike announced over the loudspeaker. Now then, let's look at the board for the first brackets. Up first we have, wait, what's going on in the fields? I didn't know we had cheerleaders, especially male ones. Mike announced confusingly as everyone looked and saw something hilarious and awkward. Mineta, Kaminari, as well as 2 guys from 1B, Kaibara and Tsubiraba, entered the field in female cheerleading outfits. As for why? Well, flashback. Whilst on his way back to the lunchroom, Izuku overheard Mineta, Kaminari, and the other 2 telling Yamamo and Kindu that Aizawa and Vlad King had told them to tell the girls that the classes needed a cheerleading team. Suspicious, Izuku immediately intervened, and whilst the 4 guys tried to weasel their way out of the lie, they evenly broke down, under the duress of killing intent, and pathetically begged forgiveness. Now Izuku may have been willing to overlook this attempted prank, as the guys called it. However, it wasn't up to him. Oh no, it was up to the girls. The guys had just tried to wear revealing cheerleader uniforms on live TV, and they were most definitely not happy. End of flashback. Back to the tournament, the first brackets were finally revealed with some ceremony. Up first, people, we have Class 1A's resident Quirkless Wonder and Martial Arts MSTR. Midoriya Izuku, and his opponent is the Queek copying and self-proclaimed leader of 1B. Manomanito. Mike announced to uproarious cheers and applause, as well as some fanfare from the cheerleaders. Preliminaries. The first fight between Izuku and Monoma was a bit of letdown in all honesty. Monoma had copied a dozen of his classmates' quirks and combined them before proclaiming his inevitable victory, only to get his but thoroughly handed to him by Izuku's martial arts skills and superior physical abilities. Round 1 went to Midoriya. The second fight was between the representatives of 1A and 1B, Momo and Kindu. This fight was a lot more exciting, with both young women bringing their A-game, with Momo using her quirk Tom its fullest extent to create tools and equipment, whilst Kindu used her unique, big-hand karate martial arts. In the end, however, Momo was overwhelmed by Kindu's furious forward momentum, which ended with Momo surrendering and both showing respect and sportswomanship towards one another. Round 2 went to Kindu. The third fight was brutal to watch as Bakugo violently and ruthlessly overwhelmed Jiro with his explosions to the point that people began to boo him. Round 3 went, unfortunately, to Bakugo. The fourth fight was a lot better as Kirishima and Tetsu fought each other with honor and dignity, showing respect to one another and embodying sportsmanship. The battle, however, ended in a draw at both contestants knocking each other out in a cross-counter. Round 4 was to be determined later. The fifth fight was interesting, but over in a minute, with Todoroki launching a wave of ice at Shishida, who managed to power through for a while only to get completely overwhelmed, ending up buried in ice. The monstrous yet gentle young man surrendered immediately. Round 5 went to Todoroki. The sixth fight was a real doozy, however, as despite being outmatched by her opponent, Yurika put up a significant fight against Hananuki, who could soften materials he touched and swim through them. Despite that, however, Yurika would not give up, continuously rising back up to get straight back into the fight, landing a few solid hits on her opponent, only being stopped when she was submerged in the arena up to her neck and the concrete was rehardened. She was rather distraught at the loss, but Hananuki was a good sport and complimented her abilities when he released her. Round 6 went to Hananuki. The seventh fight was rather an upset, as Ida fought Toki from General Education. The two of them were surprisingly well matched, as Toki used what she'd learned in Izuku's club to keep pace with Ida whilst launching water streams at him, whilst Ida bobbed and weaved. The fight ended when Ida tried to use his secret technique, his Recipro Burst, to knock his opponent out the ring, only for his engines to misfire and launch himself out the ring. Apparently, Toki had gotten some water into his exhausts and caused a compression malfunction. Round 7 went, surprisingly, to Toki. Lastly, the 8th fight was a commercial, seeing as Hatsum had roped Mina into a scheme to show off her babies. Now credit where it's due, Mina did a spectacular job as a showroom model for Hatsum Inventions. She put in a lot of energy into her performance. However, the performance itself went on for over 45 minutes, and by the end of it all, Hatsum just walked off the arena and gave Mina the win. Round 8 went to Ishido, and the audience breathed a huge sigh of relief. Announcer's box. Well, that last match was UHHH. Something, anyway. Let's move on to the second round with the next set of brackets. Mike announced as the next brackets appeared on the Jumbotron. Up first, we have a battle between two MSTR martial artists. On the left, we have 1A lean green fighting machine, Midoriya Izuku, versus Class 1B resident MSTR of Big Hand Karate, Kendo Itsuka. Mike announced as the contestants entered the arena. Second round. Been looking forward to this for 2 weeks, Midoriya. Don't you dare disappoint me. Kendo states, taking a stance conducive to her style. No need to worry, Kendo, I intend to deliver. Izuku replied as he took a stance for style of fighting. Go. Midnight cried out as she fired the starting pistol. The two combatants immediately threw themselves at each other with ferocity. Kendo was a valiant opponent for Izuku with her unique style of big hand karate. However, with but a few looks at it, he copied all her moves in mere minutes. And with these techniques copied, he began to dismantle her ability to fight. Kendo certainly wasn't going to go down easy, but it soon became inevitable that she would go down. Even when she began to pull out her secret techniques and sudden size changes, which actually pushed Midoriya back a little, they only worked once before Izuku memorized and countered them. This, along with Midoriya's ever-evolving strength and skill, meant that whilst Kendo put up one hell of a fight, she was simply outclassed and eventually overwhelmed. Izuku took advantage of a missed swing to trip Kendo, grab her, and toss her from the ring. Round 1 went to Midoriya. You good there, Kendo? He asked, offering her a hand up. Yeah, just some bruises on my ribs and pride. Men, you are tough. She replied respectfully as she took his hand. Better luck next time then. Izuku stated as they left the arena. Oh, you can bet on me coming for another round, Midoriya. In fact, I'm going to join that martial arts club of yours and challenge you every chance I get from now on. Kendo stated boldly with a determined smile, causing Izuku to chuckle. I look forward to it. He replied as Mike announced the next fighters. The second fight of the second round was between Kirishima, who'd won an arm wrestling contest against Tetsu to move on to the next round, and Bakugo, who looked like a rabid animal. The fight was again rather brutal, with Bakugo showing no respect or mercy for his opponent. But that didn't stop Kirishima from giving Bakugo a hard time and giving the fight his all. It came down to a battle of attrition between Bakugo's ferocity and explosions against Kirishima's durability and endurance. The battle dragged on, and Kirishima was loving it. Bakugo, however, was not, and was getting angrier by the second, spitting out cusses like a machine gun on live TV. The battle hits its crescendo when the two combatants split up and Bakugo began charging an attack he'd been saving for Deku and Icy Hot. Kirishima saw this and went to tank it head-on, activating his quirk to its maximum, remembering the words Midoriya told him on the bus. The fight ended with Bakugo unleashing an attack he called Howitzer Impact, which detonated with significant force and threw Kirishima out the ring with some force. Thankfully, he was durable enough to walk away with on a few injuries. Bakugo scoffed when Kirishima offered a handshake for a match while fought and walked off. Round 2 went again to Bakugo. The third fight was another interesting one. Both students, that being Todoroki and Hananuki, were in UA on recommendation. Both had powerful abilities, and both knew how to use them efficiently. The match began with Todoroki's signature move, a massive wave of ice, which did hit its mark, but Hananuki simply reduced the ice to slush by softening its molecular bonds, thereby easily escaping. The young man then charged Todoroki, hoping to make the fight a hand-to-hand battle. In response to this, Todoroki just kept firing icebergs at his opponent, only for all of them to be reduced to slush, and receiving a punch in the face for his troubles. The fight then got physical, with Todoroki desperately trying to defend himself with his ice, but Hananuki just adapted by attacking from his right side. It looked as though the son of Endeavor was about to finally lose. That was until he unleashed a truly gigantic attack, which buried half the stadium in ice. Thankfully, no one was hurt or killed by the attack, but Hananuki was soundly defeated as the force of the attack launched him from the ring into the crowd area. Round 3 went to Todoroki. Barely. Mike then announced that they'd to a break to remove the ice and would be back after some commercials. Meanwhile, with Bakugo. Bakugo was fuming. That last fight had actually challenged him, and he didn't like it. That extra had had the gall to stand up to him and not accept his place beneath him. Bakugo then looked at the syringes he'd been given by an extra from Aldera, who'd followed him to Ryloth. Bakugo never paid the guy any attention, only letting him stick around to act as his patsy. He didn't even remember the guy's name. But about a week ago he'd been approached by him and given these syringes and told they'd guarantee his victory at the sports festival. Before Bakugo could get the guy to explain himself, he was gone, leaving the syringes in the blonde's possession. His next fight was against Deku, and he figured the little SHD was long overdue for a well-delivered beating for believing he could ever take Katsuki's spotlight away from him. So, with trepidation, he stuck the string in his neck. Back to the stadium. After the ice was melted, the final match of the second round began between Ishido and Toki. As soon as the starting pistol was fired, Mina rushed Toki, using her acid to skate at high speed, only to be slammed by several steams of water Toki had pulled from the marshland that now surround the arena. Mina then tried the ranged option by throwing globules of acid at her opponent, but Toki then simply created a crisscrossed aqua ring to catch and dissolve the acid. It was now Toki's turn to go on the offensive as she used her water streams like WHPS to attack at distance. The funny thing was that Izuku recognized Toki's movements as an adaptation of his own when using Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist. He was impressed. She'd taken what he'd taught and adapted it into her own style. The match continued on for a few minutes, but it was obvious that Mina wasn't going to win as her opponent hard countered her too much. So she surrendered honorably and Toki shook her hand as a show of sportswomanship. The final round went to Toki. Announcer's box. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and all those in between, it's time for the third round. And to start US of his battle between two powerhouses, Midoriya Izuku, the quirkless anomaly of 1A, and Bakugi Katsuki, the furious firecracker also of 1A. Mike announced as the two former friends stood at either ends of the arena. Third round. The contestants walked up to the arena, ready to fight. Izuku was his usual calm and collected self, but Bakugo, he looked like he was about to burst a BLD vessel. I'm gonna mess up that annoying face of yours, Deku. Bakugo threatened, but Izuku gave no reply. What? Think you too good to talk to me now, huh? The blonde demanded, still getting no reply. Answer me, you quirkless F. Bakugo yelled indignantly, still getting nothing out of Izuku. Are both contestants ready? Midnight asked. Of course I'm ducking ready. Bakugo snapped at her. Meanwhile, Izuku gave a simple thumbs up. All right then. Ready. Go. Midnight announced as she fired the starting pistol, causing all hell to break loose. Bakugo threw himself at Izuku with full force, using his explosions to fly at his opponent. Izuku meanwhile did nothing but stand there. What's the matter, Deku? Said yourself in fear already. Bakugo mocked as he went to attack. He was inches away from landing said attack, until Izuku dodged last second, grabbed his arm and threw him with the intent of a ring out. Bakugo barely managed to maneuver himself back into the arena before hitting the hard concrete. You fing was. Can't take me in a straight, so now you're resorting to cheap tricks. Bakugo shouted angrily. You really are the most self-delusional person I've ever met, Katsuki. Izuku stated, finally speaking. What? Bakugo replied, almost blowing a gasket, but he wasn't given enough time. Izuku was on him in a millisecond. He unleashed a combination of attacks that made the blonde feel like he was being thrown around in a tornado. The attacks came from every direction and hit every part of body relentlessly. The whole affair only lasted a few minutes, but by the end of it, Bakugo was already on his last legs. What was that you were saying about not taking you on a straight fight? Izuku asked condescendingly. At this point, Bakugo was on the verge of throwing a fit. He was so angry. In fact, his nose began bleeding from how high his BLD pressure was. He hated losing. He especially hated losing to weaklings who had no right to even touch him. So Bakugo decided then and there, he would not lose to this. To this. DKU. Die. He screamed as his hands glowed an incandescent orange and white before he unleashed a truly devastating blast. Izuku was caught in the attack, and the crowd went silent in utter horror. Ha ha. That'll teach you to insert yourself into someone else's destiny, you pathetic, quirkless Deku. Bakugo shouted as he laughed maniacally. You want to know something? I think I've finally figured you out. A voice came from the smoke to Bakugo's surprise. The crowd then saw a shake moving in the smoke. You're a coward. It continued as the smoke cleared. A narcissistic coward who is so scared of his own weakness that he couldn't let anyone else rise higher than himself. Izuku stares as he emerges from the remnants of Bakugo's attack, his clothing only looking to be lightly singed. He'd used Water Stream Rock's smashing fist to deflect the flames of Bakugo's attack to create a domed pocket inside the attack. What the hell are babbling on about, Deku? Bakugo demands an answer as fear crept up his spine. Why you always persist in calling everyone extras and using demeaning nicknames? It's an attempt to break their spirits so they could never improve, never surpass you. Otherwise, that little voice in the back of your head would be right. That little voice that tells you the truth every second of every day. You're not the protagonist, and that fact scares you to death, doesn't it? Izuku explained calmly as he approached Bakugo. Because to you, if Katsuki Bakugo isn't the greatest or the best, then what is he? Just another extra. Izuku continued calmly as he looked into Bakugo's eyes before moving faster than the eye could see and unleashing a barrage of attacks. At this point, Bakugo was silently panicking. This pathetic, quirkless waste of life was actually winning and was about to beat him. Him, the greatest hero to ever live. No, he couldn't. He wouldn't lose to this. This Deku. As Bakugo reeled from the attacks he sustained, he pulled out another syringe. However, before he could use it, a hand grabbed his wrist. The hell do you think you're doing, Katsuki? Izuku demanded as he pulled the syringe from his opponent's hand. Miss Midnight, any idea what this is? Izuku asked the umpire as he tossed the syringe. As Midnight caught and studied the syringe, she was shocked. She immediately announced her findings. Bakugo Katsuki is hereby disqualified from the Spurts Festival for usage of an illegal substance, she announced as the entire country gasped in horror. As Katsuki hears this, he was incensed. These extras were trying to keep him from his destiny. This was some conspiracy, wasn't it? They were all jealous of him. Yes, that's it, they're all jealous of his greatness. Mr. Bakugo, please the arena, or you be removed by force, Midnight announced, causing Bakugo to glare at her. Like hell I will, he screamed before turning and attacking her. Thankfully for Midnight, Izuku intervened and deflected the attack. Are you alright, Miss Midnight? He asked kindly with a smile. Yes, I'm alright. But you go now. You've already won, and he needs to be punished, she replies as she glared back at Bakugo. No, I don't think I will. You see, I think that this has been a long time coming. But don't worry, let me take your place in punishing him, Izuku replied as he walked towards Bakugo. You still think you can beat me, huh? You stupid Deku, Bakugo tells indignantly. I've done it plenty of times before, Izuku calmly responded. Well, fine then, I'll just kill you, Baking screamed as he once again launched himself at Izuku, but it was too late. Izuku caught him midair and laid into him with precision and ferocity. By the end of it, Bakugo could barely stand. Seeing this, Izuku left him to his fate. But Bakugo wouldn't have it. Get back here and finish it, Deku. Because if you don't end it here, and now I'll just come back and kill you, he screamed, hoping to ruin Deku's life. Izuku then simply turned around, approached Bakugo, lifted his hand, and struck his former friend with a 1-inch punch infused with his heart-exploding release technique. The resulting strike immediately took all the fight out of Bakugo and dropped him. Izuku was then officially announced as the winner. Hidden location. AFO watched the sports festival intently for 2 reasons. Firstly, to figure out who All Might gave OFA to, and secondly, to aid Tamura in deducing his future enemy's weaknesses. When it came to Tamura, however, he wasn't having much luck. The young man kept complaining and focused too hard on the kill instead of looking for weaknesses to break down and humiliate, perhaps even manipulate his foes. But as for the other reason, there you are, my property, he states over the monitor into the bar. Sensei? Tamura asked. The green boy was the one to kill my Nomu, correct? AFO asked. Yes, sensei, he tore Nomu apart. Tomura replied, getting angrier the more he remembered. Then he is the one. Look at his power, his speed, his endurance, yes. He has it. AFO stated confidently as he watched Izuku fight. If you're referring to Izuku Midoriya, MSTR, then I must contest that conclusion. The university is making rather clear he is quirkless. Kurogiri pointed out as he cleaned glasses. Oh, Kurogiri, so sophisticated yet, so simple-minded. It's obvious that UA is using him to garner support. As we all should know by now, one cannot have any real power without a quirk. AFO explained condescendingly. My apologies, MSTR. Kurogiri replied as the screen showed Bakugo's final defeat. Now he's an interesting one. AFO thought to himself as he observed the blonde boy being dragged away. Anger like that could be useful, if aimed correctly. Secret office. Even with the supplies we provided him with, he still failed to defeat that filthy remnant of the past. A voice belonging to a man with a massive nose stated in an upset manner. Stadium. After Bakugo had been dealt with, Mike then announced the next fight between Todoroki and Toki. The fight was unfortunately rather brief. Toki tried to hit Todoroki with her water streams, but was immediately frozen and Todoroki was declared the winner. Announcer's box. All rote sports fans, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's the final round of the UA Sports Festival Tournament. Mike announced to thunderous applause. It'll be a battle between the ice-cold son of Endeavor, Shoto Todoroki, and the multi-talented martial arts MSTR, Izuku Midoriya. He announced to even more applause. Hallway. As Izuku was making his way to the arena, he turned a corner and found himself face-to-face with someone he'd hoped to never meet. Endeavor. The hero immediately noticed Izuku and began to speak. Boy, I must speak with you. He stated like his words were law. Izuku had no patience for this man, so he decided to test his resolve by unleashing a concentrated wave of killing intent and letting it wash over the flame hero. Endeavor immediately clamped up. His mouth felt drier than the desert, his muscles all seized up. His combat instincts told him now was the time to either run or hide. Well, come on then, I don't have all day. Izuku stated mockingly as the flame hero shook in fear. As he thought, Endeavor be strong on body, but of mind and spirit. He was weak. Guess that explained why he gave up and dumped his ambitions on his son. Izuku then left the hero to his own devices and withdrew his aura, finally letting the hero breath again. Finals. As Izuku walked out, he saw Todoroki, his usual scowl strewn across his face. You're going to hold back, aren't you? Izuku asked. I've told you again, and again, I refuse to use that BSDRDS fire. Todoroki replied spitefully. I can understand why you wouldn't want to use his flames, but I'm not talking about his fire. I'm talking about yours. Izuku stated confidently. What the hell are you going on about? Todoroki asks. You keep referring to your flames, his fire, as if Endeavor himself powers your abilities. Izuku states. No, I'm the one who generates the flames. Why would you think it was his fire? Todoroki snapped back, only realized what he'd said. Midnight they announced the start of the final match. See, it's your fire. Izuku stated as he took a swift combat stance. No, it's his fire. Todoroki shouted as he unleashed an iceberg, hoping to overwhelm Izuku's martial arts. Izuku, in response to this challenge, proceeded to split the iceberg in two. Impossible. Todoroki muttered. This really shouldn't be that surprising to you, seeing as your ice has only barely been able to keep you ahead of the competition. Izuku stated. What? Todoroki replied as he launched another ice attack. Shishida broke through your initial attack, and Hananuki liquefied your onslaught, as well as pushed you to use that enormous attack. Both of them had non-lethal intentions, and they both managed to nearly overcome you. Imagine what would happen if you fought someone with abilities like theirs, but with lethal intentions? Izuku explained as he parried another iceberg. Did my father put you up to this? Todoroki demanded. He did come to try and talk to me in the tunnel, but I shut him up real quick with my killing intent. Izuku explained to Todoroki's shock. You shut him up? He asked. Yup, and it was really easy to actually. His spirit was so weak he immediately clamped up. Izuku replied. Todoroki was stunned. No one had ever been able to shut his father up when he got going. But now his opponent, who he was currently trying to defeat, I've been able to do it with a little effort. Do you see now why this vow of yours is pointless? Do you see now that cowering before a man who is so weak he shunted all of his responsibilities onto his own son, you, and how it's going to lead to nothing in the long run? Izuku asked with crossed arms. What are you talking about? Todoroki asked that he was still trying to comprehend his father being weak. I'm talking about how you're essentially giving your father exactly what he wants. I'm talking about how you not using his fire is still within the parameters of his plan. He doesn't care whether or not you do or don't use them. He just cares whether or not you become the number one. What I'm talking about is the fact that those flames you make are yours and yours alone. And if you don't start using them, you're going to end up dead long before you even crack the top. Izuku states. Shoto just stood there speechless. So much was being said, yet he couldn't get his father out of his head. Shoto, do you remember what I said on the bus when we were driving to the USJ? Izuku asked using Todoroki's first name. Yeah, you said something about All Might retiring soon and how he was on his last legs. Slowing down, he replied, what do you think's going to happen when he finally does? There'll be chaos in the streets and the people will be scared. And when the people look to the heroes for safety, do you think they'll look at your father and think, yeah, I still feel safe? Izuku states as he launches at Shoto. There is an era of chaos on the horizon, Shoto. And you can either help me mitigate the damages by using your full strength, or you can give up right now and give your spot on the hero course to someone who will. Izuku explains as he attacks Todoroki, sending him flying to the arena's edge. Shoto then got back up and looked Izuku in the eye. So what's it going to be, Shoto? Do you want to keep being your father's puppet, or do you want to be a hero? Izuku asked, and there was silence. Until, whoosh, Shoto's left side exploded in roaring flames. I want to be a hero, Shoto cried out as his also began manifesting, and he ignored his father's cheers. Good, now don't hold anything back on me now, Izuku replied as they threw themselves at one another. The two of them threw the full strength at one. Another martial arts met fire and ice at full force. Icebergs shattered as flames danced, whilst Izuku performed the dance of martial arts, so appealing it brought a tear to the eyes of many heroes. Then suddenly, Shoto unleashed a massive torrent of flame at his opponent, but Izuku chose not to dodge. Instead, he allowed himself to be engulfed in it. The crowd, and Shoto, went silent believing Izuku had died, until a figure began moving through the flames, and what emerged reassembled a fire demon. Then it spoke. Is that the best you can do, Todoroki? Izuku asked as his charbroiled skin flaked off. Izuku had emerged from the flames completely scorched, but still moving, his endurance and resilience too. Pain on display for everyone to see. Izuku then took a stance and spoke again. It's time for this battle to reach its crescendo. He stayed as he used his techniques in tandem, which caused Shoto to realize a combo move was coming, and he immediately began preparing his own. Flash Freeze Heat Wave. He cried out, unleashing his strongest attack. Roaring Aura Sky-ripping Fist. Izuku cried out. The two attacks slammed into one another, then caused a massive explosion of energy which flattened the entire arena. Midnight and Cementos hid in a concrete bunker that was almost uprooted by the blast. After the winds finally calmed down from the massive explosion of kinetic energy, Midnight peeked her head out and saw who had won. Only one of the two young men was left standing. Izuku Midoriya has won. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of this year's sports festival is Izuku Midoriya, she announced. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause as Izuku just stood there smiling with his fist raised high to signify his victory. Award ceremony. Later on, after having recovered from his scorching thanks to a meal from Lunch Rush, Izuku, Todoroki, and Toki all stood on the podium. Bakugo was absent due to his disqualification and more than likely subsequent arrest for using drags during the tournament. Midnight then began announcing they'd be given their medals by a special guest. However, in the middle of her introduction, the special guest interrupted her with his booming voice. I am here, with the winning medals. All Might announced bombastically as Midnight glared at him for interrupting her. The hero then walked up to Toki and placed the copper medal around her neck. Congratulations, young Toki. You've shown that despite a rough start, anyone can strive to be a hero with enough hard work, he stated as he hugged her, and she began tearing up. Thank you, All Might. Sir. She wobbled out through her emotions. He then moved on to Todoroki. Young Todoroki, I'm glad to see you've finally come around to using your fire. I won't ask as to why for the sake of your privacy, but just know I am proud of you, he stated as he draped the silver medal over his student's neck and hugged him warmly. As All Might pulled away, Todoroki didn't want to let go of the first warm and fatherly hug he'd ever received, but eventually had to let go. The hero then approached Izuku. Young Midoriya, what is there for me to say? You're a credit and an inspiration to quirkless people everywhere, and I am deeply proud of you. You have most certainly earned this medal, All Might stated as he draped the gold medal around Izuku's neck and hugged him. And as for everyone else who participated, say it with me now plus ultra thank you for all your hard work, All Might announced, not saying his signature catchphrases alongside everyone else. The hero made a hasty retreat when everyone started complaining. UA Medbay? Elsewhere. In the medbay, Katsuki Bakugo was just waking up, strapped to a medical cot with cuffs, and being loomed over by his homeroom teacher, the nurse, the dean, and a guy in a flasher's mac. You young man are in a whole heap of trouble, Eraserhead stated in a disappointed tone. So, this was the end of part 3 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.